Welcome to my library, dear guest. My name is Cole, and I will be your storyteller. Lean back and relax as I read to you today's story, titled Lawful Evil Cleric of a Fertility Goddess Tries to Derail My First Ever Campaign, by the author, Super Shook. I'm going to start this by giving consent to any YouTubers, Twitch streamers, or whoever else may want to read this post on their channels. Saves us both time, and I really don't mind, because I doubt the problem will ever read this. Even if he does, I don't care. He should realize he was in the wrong by now. Also, this happened about 1.5 years ago, so my memory may be a little off. Backstory. My junior year of college, I finally convinced a few of my friends to play some D&D with me. We were all pretty new to the game, and I'd offered to DM for them. Being a poor college student, I didn't want to purchase a module or deal with finding one for free, so I decided to homebrew the campaign. The world was fairly well built, but my story definitely needed some work. And, as the title mentions, this would be the first campaign I ever DM'd. I asked a friend if he would like to be a player to give me feedback and help me out along the way, since he had a lot of experience and he was happy to join the campaign. He lived nearby my college, so it worked out really well. He wasn't the problem, and it was great reassurance when I was doing really bad, as what the problem player had said really started to affect my storytelling. I'll also be the first to say my campaign was very rough. Encounters were unbalanced, the NPCs felt out of place or inconsistent, but the input from the rest of the players greatly helped the story improve. The problem came as a person one of the other players had dated. At first, he seemed fine. He had experience in D&D, and I thought he would be a viable asset along with my friend. Needless to say, that is not what happened. Now then, onto the story. Story time. The characters in the story are as follows. Me, a DM, struggling to make everything enjoyable for everyone. Paladin, my experienced friend who was amazing with both role-playing and helping me with the campaign. Human Variant Paladin, don't remember the subclass. Warlock, one of the newer players. He had been making characters and apparently played some one-shots on Roll20, but all of what he made tended to be min-maxed and have abrasive personalities. Still never went out of his way to be a problem to people in combat or anything. Tiefling Warlock. Fiend, because fire go brrr. Fighter. One of the new players. Not important to the story, but I felt like I should include them for party-size purposes. Half-elf fighter. They used a trident and missed a lot. Rogue, the last of the newbies. She is the one who had dated the problem briefly and invited him to the campaign. She didn't know he would be a problem, but brought the problems up to me. Tabaxi Rogue. Cleric, the subject of our story. He was playing a cleric of some unearthed arcana goddess who usually only had priestesses and believed in pacifism. If anyone can tell me the goddess, please do. I think it started with an H. We initially had a session 0, but nothing of note happened there. Everything seemed to be okay, and everyone's character seemed okay to me too. This was my first mistake, as I did not look at everyone's sheet personally to make sure I knew exactly what they were playing, the backstories, or to check for any discrepancies. So things quickly rolled to Session 1. Session 1. Immediately, a problem arose as I had not planned fully ahead for the personality and voice for the NPC quest giver. Yes, I am aware I railroaded them hard, but again, it was my first campaign I've ever DM'd and the first one I made. He ended up having a drug addiction unintentionally and being overly paranoid. The new players at least found part of it funny, as we were dumb college students. However, Cleric would raise his first red flag that day. If only I had noticed. Cleric. Since the king is a druggie, why don't we kill him and institute a theocracy? It shouldn't be that hard to take him. Me. The king looks at you, pulls out a comically long sword and begins to unsheath it. Go ahead and try me. You'll regret it. Cleric. Well, the sword won't fit in the room. Yeah, I should have noticed the problems right away, but I was dumb and new, plus none of the other players felt like it was a problem right away. We managed to defuse the situation, railroad them out the door, and had them on their first quest. Clear out an old pub that was overrun with a cultist group known as the Cult of Desires. Session 2. The group arrived at the old pub and started to formulate a plan to infiltrate the cult to minimize fighting. Cleric says he has the perfect plan and tells everyone to follow his lead. No one followed him into the pub, but waited carefully to see what happens. Cleric. Hello, fellow degenerates. Anyone would be pretty peeved at being called a degenerate, but for reasons the players would soon find out, the cultists were extra mad at his comment. Cultist. What did you call us? Do you think we are like them? Gestures to a door on the right side of the players. Cleric. Tries to explain what he meant, but the cultists had none of it. Seeing the cultists getting aggressive and angry, Paladin rushed in to save the cleric and combat ensued. Nothing super notable from Cleric here. During the combat, Rogue had pushed a barrel of ale that rolled over a fighter, a cultist or two, and broke down the door previously gestured to by the very angry and now dead cultist. From the now opened room, two very much naked people who were sitting around a stripper pole emerged. For some additional context, my players said, "The Cult of Desires sounds like a strip club." So I added this as an Easter egg for them. They only asked that they be spared and set free. Cleric decided they could only be saved and not murdered by the party if they agreed to convert to his religion. This should have been my second red flag from him, but again, they didn't trigger alarms at the time. To avoid wasting the players' time during the session, I had these NPCs agree and leave. They never confirmed to convert, so they just didn't. The party then eavesdropped on the cult leader, who sounded like a very evil, unlike German man. They made a plan to have Paladin take Cleric as a prisoner to the leader and ambush them all. The plan went off without a hitch, and the cult was defeated. That should have been the end of it. But Cleric decided that the cult leader wasn't dead enough, and proceeded to sacred flame the corpse for 5 minutes until the body was ash, and the body's ash was ash. Again, I don't know how I missed this as a problem, but the party returned to the capital for their reward, and Session 2 came to a close. Session 3. A bit of a disclaimer, things are gonna get a bit more forgotten at this point, but that's because around this time the Cleric's BS was becoming more and more clear. This time they went after the Cult of the World, who were located in a ghost town. Cleric, once again, tried to instate a theocracy. No one supported him, again. I also made sure to make it extra clear that there were many people standing guard. He backed down much easier. In this ghost town, I wanted them to explore and find a chapel with a hidden switch to the basement. One of my players asked if there was an organ and got a nat 20 on playing the Moonlight Sonata. I said, screw the switch, this works too. They found a group of people playing poker with guns on their hips. The point of this cult was that they worshipped a clockwork golem that was created only to create firearms for war. It happened forgotten underground, and the group felt genuinely bad for the construct, wishing to free it from its borders. The word part comes from the globe located in the room of the golem that seemed to fill up depending on how many firearms had been made. The party was actually able to get through this section without killing the cult. They convinced them to move to the old pub and get it up and running again, thus solving two problems at once. However, Cleric kept trying to make them convert to his religion or die. Even ordered them to make the new church a thing. Did I forget to mention that he decided that he had more authority than a neighboring nation that owned the pub? Enough to claim it as his own church. I did? Well, yes, Cleric decided that he was commandeering the pub as a church, despite it being known not to be owned by the nation he was working for. The rest of the party told them to agree to his demands, but not do it. Also, around this point, Cleric decided he didn't like Warlock. Cleric used Create Water to make the Warlock's socks wet, and he took offense to that, although it would not show until later on. Session 3 came to an end, with the characters leveling up to level 3. I had them level after each quest, by the way. They started at level 1. Session 4. This session actually went pretty well. No attempts of theocratic takeover or anything. I had my favorite DM explanation of something during the session. However, there was one thing of note. Fighter could not make it to the session. I gave them a silly NPC for their quest to destroy the Cult of Dragons, and played Fighter's character in combat. The only thing that should have been a red flag, and I should have never okayed, was allowing the players who were present for the session to feat. They fought a dragon. People almost died, and if the fighter was actually present, they may have done better, since I more or less asked what they wanted them to do. So I thought it was fair at the time. Cleric took Warcaster. Oops. Session 5. This was the point where I finally started to realize Cleric was a problem. I had planned a big battle where they would not succeed in stopping the BBG from being resurrected. Turn Undead quickly made the fight less threatening, and soon the cultists trying to revive our main villain were all killed. However, as I said, the BBG would still be awakened. 3 dark masses traversed the continent the party was on, and 3 new quests would be ready for them. However, Cleric made it very clear that he didn't really care about stopping this evil, unless he was paid for it. This led me to ask his alignment. Me. Cleric, what's your alignment? Cleric. Lawful. Me. Lawful what? Cleric. I'm lawful. Me. Cleric, I'm your DM. If you don't want the other players to know your alignment, I understand. But you cannot hide that information from me. What is your alignment? Cleric. Lawful. This session ended with that. I was upset that he was disrespecting me this way, but I wanted to let it slide for the sake of the campaign. Weather was very bad that day, and Cleric, Rogue, and Fighter all left their character sheets with me for safekeeping so they wouldn't be damaged. Cleric had erased his alignment and replaced it with a smiley face. Everyone disliked that. The Warlock knew Warlock, not Cleric, wouldn't be returning for a while and burned Cleric's church down. And more importantly, Rogue wanted to drop out of the campaign. She was no longer having fun. I was sorry that it wasn't fun for her and asked if there was something I could improve upon to make it better for her. Rogue informed me that the reason it wasn't fun for her was Cleric. He'd constantly badmouth me after sessions, saying I was a bad DM, encounters sucked, roleplay sucked, and he wanted to derail the campaign. She also informed me that his character sheet clearly said lawful evil. I told her I understand, and asked if I could run her character, to which she said yes. Session 6. At this point in time, Warlock had to drop out of the campaign due to mock trial. He would be away on weekends, so me and him had built an additional NPC to be a healer, since we decided Cleric wasn't doing his job and we wanted to straight kill his character. Warlock had also helped me buff and balance the next 2 story elements, as he would not be involved in them. We were very excited to punish Cleric for how he was acting, but we never expected Session 6 to be our last session. Cleric decided he wanted to claim insurance on the church. Didn't know he owned the church, to be honest, but okay. Paladin decided that the kids from the orphanage he was from, yes, the Paladin was an orphan, his backstory wasn't important till now, to spread rumors that Cleric is committing insurance fraud, since Warlock was working with Cleric at the time. Never got to make that be a problem for him. The party decided that of the 3 new locations released with BBEG, that the frozen city of elves guarded by Sister Frida from Dark Souls 3 would be the best place to start. They never made it into the castle. Not because they died, but because the combat took too long. We had made enemies that had several unique effects based on a d4 roll to try to bully Cleric, but the ones we wanted did not come up. By the time they had got to the entrance of the castle, it was nearing midnight and no one wanted to continue. But next thing we knew, finals had come around and I didn't want to continue the campaign the next semester, because I no longer wanted to see Cleric's player ever again. I know I really didn't do anything wrong to this player to warrant the hate that he gave me until the end, but this left a very sour taste in my mouth when it came to being a DM. I'd always asked for feedback after my sessions, since I knew things would be shaky and rough. I think it started affecting my role-playing in general now, as I'm just not enjoying playing as much as I had before. I know it's probably not as exciting as there was no big rage quit or confrontation, but this event keeps replaying in my mind and I really want to get it off my chest. And Cleric, if you ever read this, go fuck yourself. I bet you play ranked on first-person shooters, get 0 kills, and tell your team it's their fault you lost. TLDR. Lawful evil cleric of a goddess of fertility tells a new DM his sessions were fine, shit talks behind his back, and tries to derail the campaign because, haha, funny. And that was today's story. I hope you enjoyed your stay and that I will see you again soon. For there are always more stories to be shared.